Okay, 4 for 4. We have to open up with a big shout out to our guest here, Shishiran, who has been patiently waiting in the green room in the back, waiting for us to finally get to his session. So,
But
Shishiran,
it was good to see all the demos, beginning from gateway load balancer, which is like super complex, to something which data analysts can use. Probably the one we are going to use now is going to be the simplest one and focused on the customers who may not be so much familiar in the cloud.
well, that's AWS has more customers in more areas than I can name, and
Exactly.
a demo that makes people's lives easy. Man, you're saying all the
Yeah.
right things. Maybe that's why you're here on the show, but we'll hold you to it later when we talk about the demo. Sort of,
Yeah.
getting down to brass tacks though, we're talking about Amazon Lightsail container service here. Before we get into the containers aspect, which is the new part, why don't we talk a little bit about what Amazon Lightsail is? I know it has a very particular product philosophy that is quite unique within AWS, and I think that many folks may not have heard about it before. So why don't you give us a little bit of an intro there?
Yep. Before I go into Lightsail, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Shishira Narayana. I'm a product manager on the Lightsail team. So yeah, going into Lightsail, you said the right things. Amazon Lightsail started in 2016. Our mission is to be the easiest way to get started on AWS. We started as a VPS provider offering virtual machines for customers who just wanted to come in and get a cloud VM and run their workloads on it. But over time, we identified opportunities where we could simplify the things on AWS. AWS is has hundreds of services, and for a new customer who is not familiar with the cloud, for them to come to AWS and familiarize with all those services, learn them, and use them to full potential takes quite a bit of time. So we are the first step for them into AWS ecosystem. Like I said, we started with VPS. You could get the VMs, but we identified opportunities with things like databases or load balancers. More recently, even like CDN, where we offer like very simple product to the customers. Where using all these building blocks, they can build their own applications. They could range anywhere from hosting a simple blog to a line of business application for a small startup or a SMB. So this is basically the the background of Amazon Lightsail. So key things like ease of use, simplicity, and the third important factor, which is the affordable and predictable pricing. Those are the core tenets of Lightsail. Unlike other AWS services or other cloud services outside, Lightsail, like all the services in Lightsail, come at a fixed monthly bundle price. So you can predict exactly how much you will pay at the end of the month. There are no hidden charges or surprises at the end of the month for you.
Yeah, that's a very succinct way. I really like how you describe Lightsail, and and I think it's, we talked about simplicity, and I think this is one of the Lightsail's superpowers. The fact that customers can kind of open up Lightsail, and you and the service team have done an excellent job of kind of curating the set of options so that customers are not stuck in this kind of analysis paralysis, right? And especially with respect to the containers feature launch, I had the privilege of kind of working with you and the team, and seeing how the process evolved. But maybe you can take us through that journey quickly. What
Yeah.
made you decide to ship this feature? Of all, I know the team was looking at a lot of different ways to take the product, got a
Yep.
lot of useful feedback from customers early on. But maybe you can take us through that, and how did that lead to today?
Yeah, definitely. So like when we started like 4 years ago, containers were in a very nascent stage, and for people, VMs used to be the thing on the cloud. They would deploy their workloads there. But in the recent years, like a lot of application developers are moving to containers. Containers have become the de facto standard in the industry for any sort of application development. But this has percolated into even lower skill sets, or people not very familiar with the cloud. They come to hear about the benefits of containers, the portability, or the way they can spin up so quickly, and you can have a workload running in minutes and it runs the same anywhere you run. Those are all the things which make containers suitable for application development. But the catch here is, for someone who just hears about containers and comes to some provider to set up their container, there are so many things to be done. You have to set up a container cluster, you have to set up load balancing, networking, plumbing. security, access control, certificates, so many things. So we were like, hearing a lot of feedback from customers that like, if I want to come and run container on Lightsail, I have to like spin up instance, install Docker on it, and then like run containers on it, then like use load balancers, so many things to take care of, right? That's usually not ideal for Lightsail customers or anyone who is like, new into exploring the containers, or even for the experienced developers who may be like, familiar with Kubernetes or any of these orchestration mechanisms. Sometimes like all we know, it's a overkill for some of the workloads. You just want to take your container image which you like developed on your desktop, and you want to just push it to cloud and see it running, and you just want to move on with it. You don't want to like, have hundreds of bells and whistles you want to configure and like, have a whole DevOps team take care of it. That's like practically not possible in many of the cases, like small startups or SMBs.
Are you saying I don't need Kubernetes to run my personal WordPress blog?
Exactly. Yeah. You
Sure. I think we need to settle this. We need to find.
So I think like when people are like, trying to run WordPress on Kubernetes, it's not because they want to run WordPress, it's because they want to run Kubernetes.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the trick is to run Kubernetes inside WordPress.
I mean, like more to learn the Kubernetes, not to run Kubernetes inside WordPress. Yeah. So, I mean, like, because you have run Kubernetes, you realize like, what's the complexities running those things, right? But that said, it doesn't mean that Kubernetes or our own versions like ECS or EKS are bad in any regard. They are seen as a step in graduation. Like most of the AWS Lightsail, Amazon Lightsail services, we have EC2 and we have Lightsail instances. Customers start with Lightsail instances, and once they mature, they have learned like what the cloud is, and their needs increase, and the features that they want is now available on the broader AWS ecosystem. That's where we like, nudge them to graduate into the broader AWS ecosystem and like use all the services there. So Lightsail is not seen as a like, end all for the customers. It's more of a graduation path. Again, that doesn't mean that they can't completely run on AWS Lightsail as their sole compute, and they can happily like run any of the workload. But when their needs mature and they have like need for broader features, we provide them easy way to graduate to the broader AWS Lightsail AWS ecosystem.
Yeah, one thing I was gonna try and sort of put succinctly, and I want to hear everyone's thoughts here on it, is like, when you said before, Sashira, when folks want to come to the cloud, the table stakes can seem high at times, right? Like you just want an application that runs on an instance, but there's networking, and then there's permissions with IAM, and all of those things are immensely powerful services, but they require time to learn and understand how to use them effectively. And I think what a lot of people have realized, and clearly we've listened to that feedback because we've launched Amazon Lightsail, but clearly there are a significant enough number of applications or use cases where folks really just kind of want the sensible default for a lot of things, right? On their VPC, they don't want to rock the boat there, on their permissions. Well, all I need to do is be able to deploy to this application. I should have sensible defaults. And while you can do all of that with the foundational services and you get even greater flexibility, that can be distracting, or Rob said, paralyzing in certain scenarios. And so my read on Lightsail and what we're bringing here with the Lightsail containers launch is the ability to what you said before. I have an AMI I've developed locally. Maybe all I do is I run Docker on my local system. Now I want this to exist as a cloud application or something that's hosted in the cloud. Lightsail containers enables me to take that AMI or that image, that container image, and now through a really easy to use workflow be able to get that up and running as quickly as possible without having to worry about configuring all these things where largely I was just going to pick the sensible default anyway, but that is a barrier to me getting to deploy that application.
Exactly, you hit it right on the point. So Lightsail in general is a very opinionated service. So for every product we build, we choose the sensible defaults for the customers. There's obviously some of the basic stuff which customers, like most customers, need to configure. We provide those options, but the things which a casual customer would not care about, we make our own opinions and implement that, and we keep it away from the customer. That way, we are not confusing them with too many things to configure. And when it comes to Lightsail containers, the same concept continues, where we do allow them some choice of what kind of compute they want, what sort of horizontal scaling they want, all those things. But if they want even further granularity, picking GPU instances or doing things like service mesh or plumbing, peering, networking, those kind of things. Obviously, like ECS and EKS are our full-fledged services, which are much better choice.
See, I don't ever think the person that's interested in running a service mesh and the person that's I have this little image that I've run for the first time and I want to use a container, those feel experientially worlds apart, but also what they expect their application to be able to do, right? And so, to your point, I think the word graduation makes a lot of sense. This is truly one of the services that is workflow and works backwards from optimizing time to value, I would say, for someone who uniquely may have oftentimes very little understanding of AWS services, or even if they do, there are scenarios in which Lightsail may just be the easiest path to deploy, like Rob joked before, like a WordPress site, or a multitude of applications that could run using the bits and pieces that Lightsail brings together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking specifically about Lightsail containers, like you just mentioned, in just a few clicks, you can go from having your Docker image on your desktop to going to Lightsail. That's exactly true. So when a customer comes into Lightsail console, they see containers, and they create a container service. That's what the construct we call. It's the compute construct which holds your containers. And this Lightsail container service can have one or more nodes. You decide that horizontal scaling, we call it the scale, and you decide the power of each of these nodes, which is basically the CPU and memory combination. We provide some choice there, we provide 6 combinations of CPU and RAM. You choose one of the power you want, and then you choose the scale, how many nodes you want. Apart from these two, configuration parameters, the only other thing you need to give is the container image, basically. And we provide a couple of options to provide this container image. If you are completely unfamiliar with container registries, or how to use public registries, private registries, all those stuff, we provide a very built-in way of doing things, where you develop your Docker image on your desktop and directly use the CLI to push that image from your desktop to Lightsail service. So there's no need to worry about repositories or anything where you store the images. We take the image from you, put it on a repository, private repository for you, and then we take the image from there, put it on the container service, and within minutes you will have your service running on the nodes you specified with the given power and scale, and you get a fully managed TLS endpoint. So basically, your input is power, scale, and the image, and what you get back is a fully managed load balanced TLS endpoint. So we are basically abstracting everything underneath, ranging from load balancing to configuring DNS to spinning container clusters, performing health checks, name it, we have it. So it's all under the hood.
And then can this TLS endpoint be integrated, or I guess more generally, can the container service be integrated with the CDN, the Lightsail CDN and Lightsail DNS zones to provide a custom domain?
Yeah, so the support for Lightsail CDN is coming soon. We do support custom domains. You can either use Lightsail DNS, or you can even use Route 53 or any of your, if you have your domain in some other provider, you can use it as well. We give you the default domain, which would be a subdomain of cs.amazonlightsail.com, but you can add up to 3 other custom domains to the same service if you want. The certificate creation is super easy. You just create it on the console, and we give you the CNAME values for the certificates. You put it in your DNS provider, we validate the cert, you are ready to go.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess one last thing I wanted to ask before, and maybe we can dive into the demo, is I know that a lot of container orchestration services give you declarative ways to talk about how to connect containers together, not just to scale them, but there is this notion of being able to run containers that should only be communicating behind the private network, right? And I'm interested to see how that feature plays out in Lightsail containers. So perhaps when we do the demo, maybe you can highlight that.
I can definitely show that in the demo, but just to give a preview of that, the Lightsail container service you create, you can choose whether the service has a public endpoint or whether it's purely private. If you make your service private or even for a public service, every Lightsail container service gets a internal service discovery endpoint. We have a service.local address, which you can basically access from any of the other Lightsail resources, not just containers. You can even access them from Lightsail instances or databases, whichever. Like it's basically internal service discovery built in, so you don't need to worry about how my one service will discover another service or how it will discover a database.
Oh, so this is a DNS name that you can use to address a container service, even from a VPS instance, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's awesome.
The
Yeah, I'd
cool
love to see
thing
that.
about this is you can scale your container service from say you are having 4 nodes, you see increased traffic, you increase it to like 8 nodes.
Yeah.
The service discovery mechanism inside takes care of it and always keeps updated the list of healthy nodes available for you to communicate from on the service.
Awesome. Well, is this a good time
Actually,
to
I think
transition over to the
because
demo?
we touched upon the scaling part, I just want to throw in another feature we have, which is like I mentioned, you have to give the power and scale while you are creating the service, but that doesn't constrain you from like changing the power and scale later if your application grows and you want more traffic, or even if you want to scale down if there's no traffic. And the cool thing about it is when you are scaling up or down, your application is still up. We take the new configuration and like make sure like your application is service is running the new configuration, it's all healthy, and only then we flip the version to the new version. So we are taking care of the safe deployment underneath. Also you can roll back to previous version without causing any downtimes as well.
I see. So is that kind of a blue-green deployment pattern?
So it's not blue-green per se, but think of it as a safe deployment where like we only flip traffic to your latest version when it's completely healthy. We do all the health checks for you, like make sure the nodes are healthy, there are enough number of nodes like you specified, and we maintain the state.
But does the rollback imply that the older version is kept running for a period of time while the new one is being evaluated?
So the rollback happens. So we keep the image of your previous version, and when you hit rollback, we start the nodes with the older version. And once that previous version is healthy and it's all good, we just go back to that.
I see. So it's a rollback by rolling forward, kind of.
Yeah, roll forward basically.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Well, I can't wait to see the demo.
Yeah, I'm ready for demo time.
Maybe before we go into the demo, I want to highlight one key aspect which we discussed about the Lightsail value proposition, which applies to containers as well, which is the fixed affordable pricing. So container services, like when you create a container service, it comes at a fixed monthly price. This price includes everything you run on that container. So you don't need to pay anything additional for load balancing or your domains or certificates, or we even include a healthy data transfer quota with each service. So you don't even need to pay additional for your data transfer. So it's basically everything covered in one fixed price. It's basically Netflix of cloud.
That is one of my favorite features of Lightsail.
Yeah, cool. So let's dive into the demo. Let me share my screen. Cool. So I guess you guys are able to see my screen now.
Yep.
Okay. So hopefully, if time permits, we'll do 2 demos. The first one is the one which is probably the more involved one. So I have this screen on PowerPoint, which is basically showing what we will do in this demo. We have 3 container services. So what these are doing is there is a Redis data store we create as a container service. Like Rob, you asked earlier whether we could have private services. This Redis is going to be that. So we will have a Redis data store which will not be exposed to outside world, but we still wanted to communicate to our other services. So this will be listening on TCP 6379 port and no endpoint. And then we will have 2 public facing services. These are basically PHP clients which set a counter on this Redis data store. It will be a shared counter. So client one and client two will both have the same access to the same data store, and they will increment values on the data, like a counter on the data store, and they will see the value reflected in both the services. As you can see, like, because these are public, they will be listening on the port 443 from the internet, because we provide secure TLS endpoints. So this is like the broader idea of the demo. Let's dig into the console right now. Okay, so when you come to Lightsail console, you see like all the different offerings we have. Containers is the new one. Let's get right into creating a container service for our Redis service. So let's go in here. You can choose the region. And like I mentioned, we offer 6 combinations of CPU and RAM, which you can see here. And we allow you to like change the scale, like number of nodes you want. And you see your fixed monthly price for your configuration here. So let's keep it at 1 node for now. And the next thing is container service is basically the compute which hosts your containers. And you specify the containers which run on a container service by creating a deployment. So here you see like you can set up a deployment as well when you're creating your container service. If you plan to do a deployment later, that's fine too. You can just create a empty container service and you can do a deployment later. We will show that in a next service. So what I'll do right now is we have some example deployments here. Let me just pick Redis. So here you see like all the configurations are pre-populated. Like I have TCP protocol and there's a port which is listening. And we don't want Redis to be listening to the internet, so there's no public endpoint. Let me just name my service Redis 1 and then hit create container service. So right now you see it's in the pending state. While this one is baking, let's go back to our PHP application and see like what it does. Let me open Visual Studio Code. Okay, so this is my PHP application, very simple application. So as you can see, it's basically looking for 2 environment variables. One is client and the other one is Redis. So the client variable is purely to identify like the name of this PHP client. And like you notice, there are like 2 clients we will use, like client 1 and client 2. We'll just pass those names here. And then you see here, PHP is creating a Redis client, and we want the host name of the Redis. That's where like it's looking for the Redis environment variable. After that, it's a pretty simple example. Basically, we have 2 buttons here in this application. One is the button which shows what's the current value of the counter we are setting, and the other one is the one which increments the value of that counter. So yeah, like you see the name of the counter, which is counter, and you see we are getting the value from Redis for that counter, and then we are doing increment on that counter. So this is a very simple PHP application, and we have this PHP, and now we want to containerize it, right? So for people who are new with like containerization, I'll go through the steps of how I containerize this and like create an image out of it. So I have a empty or a folder here which has 3 important things in it. So one is the source. This is the one which contains the code for your application. So I have this index.php, which is the file which I just showed you, which has the code. And then I have like an image here which goes with that code. Then like if I traverse back, you see 2 files here. One is a Docker file. Docker file is basically like a manifest which you give Docker to tell like, what are the dependencies for my application, like, what needs to go in the container before it initializes. So I have the Docker file here. As you can see, it's a very simple Docker file. It starts from a base container image, which is a Apache with PHP installed on it, which is like a web application server with PHP running on it. And then like, we are basically moving from our local source folder to the home directory of that web server, Apache web server. We expose port 80. We have this part extra here because PHP needs plugins to talk to Redis. So we are basically installing Redis plugins for PHP in these commands. So yeah, this is a very simple Docker file. So you see this Docker file, and this is the plugin file for the Redis client for PHP. Now that we have this folder, let's go back to uh, terminal to see how we will build a Docker file from the application. I'm in the folder WN demo, which we were seeing. So let's start with first building a Docker image. We just do Docker build. We usually provide a friendly tag to the image. So we'll call it WN demo, which is like what's next demo. And then we just build the contents in the local folder. So when I do this, by the way, this is a live demo. So if something delays or goes wrong, bear with me. So yeah, so our image is built. You see like wndemo.latest is the image which we just built. If I do Docker images, you should see I have quite a lot of images, but you see this is the latest one I built just now. And then let's go back to see how we will push this Docker image. Okay, so before we go into that, we have to now create two services, right? Like the PHP client 1 and PHP client 2. Uh, like I mentioned, we provide two ways of transferring your image to a container service. One is you can directly push your image from your local machine to the service directly. The other way is you put it on Docker Hub as a public repository, and from the console, you just tell Lightsail to pull the image from Docker Hub. I'll do the Docker Hub first. That way, you see like how you can push your image to Docker Hub like you do now, and then use it from your container service. So for that, I need to tag now the image we created, which was WN demo, with my repository on Docker Hub, which is, we'll call this V1. We'll tag this, and now we'll do a push. I had pushed a previous version of the image, so you saw it happen quickly because Docker maintains some of the layers, so you don't need to upload all the layers all the time. So this one is basically uploaded the version to Docker Hub. So you can even go to Docker Hub and see this. Hopefully I'm logged into Docker Hub. I think I am. Oops.
I think I saw it on the other page.
Yeah,
Right there.
so here you see updated a minute ago. So now we have our image in Docker Hub. So if you click on this, Docker Hub tells that you can refer to this image, with Docker pull, like the name of the image. So now spinning up your container, like in the cloud, is literally like instead of doing the Docker pull, you will be doing it on the container service here. So let's go back to creating the container service again. So yeah, let us set up a deployment, and this time we will choose the custom deployment. Here, let's name this as client 1, and let's put the image name here. And like we saw in the application, it was expecting two environment variables. So let's put Redis, and let me put the local address of the Redis service we just created. Like I mentioned, every service comes with a local address, service discovery address, and this is the one for the Redis we created. And then we'll just put a name of the client, which is like client 1. We need to open the port, which is like port 80.
And just your quick question here. If you scroll up a little bit to the local service name, the Redis 1.service.local, you mentioned earlier that this is the canonical name for, this is the DNS name for this service, for the Redis service that we deployed earlier, right? And this would be available within to VPS instances within the same region, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Now, is there the ability to specify a particular set of VPSs that can talk to the services versus a particular set that cannot?
Yeah, so right now we have kept it a bit promiscuous, like, keeping in mind the Lightsail customers, adding that complexity is probably not good to start with. So right now they can talk to all the Lightsail services in the same region. But we do have plans in the roadmap to bring more controls to it, that way you can tell this and this service can talk to this and this service. But right now, all your services in the region can talk to each other.
Okay, and that's not, so all services can talk to all other services, and then VPS instances can talk to other services as well, right?
Yep. Okay, so we need to now tell the public endpoint. So let's just choose this first container to be our public container, and then we'll name this client 1 and create container service. Okay, so while this first client is getting prepared, so what I did is I created another blank service without a deployment. So you can see here the service is running, but it doesn't have any containers on it. So it's basically like bare compute, which is running for your containers, but there's no containers on it. So what we will do now is while doing the create first deployment, we built the image here. Assume the case where we don't want to make our images public in Docker Hub. We just want to privately push it to our private repository on Lightsail. So what I'll show now is pushing from local desktop directly to this particular service, which is WNDemo2, and using that image on the console to build up that service or deploy the containers to the service. So what we do is AWS Lightsail push container. The service name, which is WNDemo2. Then we put a label just to identify that image, and then we tell the actual image. The tag for the image was WNDemo, so we just keep it, and then we say push. So yeah, like you see, just like how it pushed the image to Docker Hub, it now pushed it to our service privately. Now, when I come back to creating the deployment, I go here and say this is the client 2, and here you see a button which says choose from stored image. When you click on this, you see there are 2 images here. The latest one is the one we just uploaded. We just pick it, and then we do the same things, which is putting Redis. We are talking to the same Redis server, so we'll put the same. Just name this the client 2. We'll put port 80.
While you're still going through this one, I think one of the really cool use cases for the previous demo where you showed pulling an image from Docker Hub, that's really cool because it's you don't need to even ever clone that image locally to test it out as your own hosted service. You could, in theory, just say, "Oh, hey, here's a image that seems to be well maintained. It's really good. Why don't I just spin it up directly through Lightsail?" And all you have to do is point at that image. You could let's say clone it or fork it or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, basically, there's no difference between doing a Docker pull on your desktop versus just going here and putting the Docker Hub name of that image. You get it directly running on cloud instead of your desktop.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to have Docker on your desktop to do that. You can do it from basically anywhere, even from your mobile browser. Okay, so let's go back to the service page, and here we see the client 1 is already running. Redis is also running. W1 demo is deploying. So while the client 2 is deploying, let's go to the client 1 and see the application. Like you see it running, and like you see the deployment we did is active. And I'll click on this. So here you see the variable we passed is now like showing up here as client 1. It's also showing up in the tab here. And it's telling that it's connecting to the remote Redis server, which is redis1.service.local. Like I said, it basically sets a counter and increments its value. Right now the counter is not set. Actually, it may be set because I was using with another service. Let's see. Oh no, like we did a brand new Redis, so it should be, yeah. So you see here, there's like no value for the Redis counter. Let's increment it. So you have incremented by 1, like into it. So now you have 2, increment it again, you have 3. So let's just remember now the value is at 4. Let's go back to the service 2 now. Okay, service 2 is probably taking some time to deploy. While we are waiting for this to deploy, maybe I can walk through like a quick preview of the second demo, which probably we don't need to go through all the steps, but just to demonstrate the WordPress use case, which Rob just mentioned. I have this another service running right here. It's called WP1, which is my WordPress service. All I did in this is basically like, I created a service. I passed the environment variables for the different parameters which WordPress takes, like the database backend, the host name of it, username, password for the database, the table names. And Nick, like you see, for the image, the only thing I gave is like WordPress. Like if you go to Docker Hub and yeah, if you see this, it just says WordPress. You take like WordPress, the latest version of it.
Yeah.
And like right in the quick reference, you see like it expects all these different environment variables to connect to a database. Because these containers are not persistent, you want a backend data store which is persistent to store all your posts and comments and all those things. So all I did was pass those environment variables, open the port 80, and that was it. Like I just deployed it, and you have it running. Uh, so one cool thing about this is like when you noticed here, I passed it a database host name of a Lightsail database. So if you go here and see the databases, I have my database running here, which is ShishidaDB. You just get the host name from here and passed it there. Uh, that was like pretty much about it. Like, it's all like configured. And when you see here, like, there is this post, and uh, there are like 2 comments on this post. So what I'll like, just to make sure that no one thinks that I'm bluffing that the backend is connected, I have uh, a SQL client which is connected to the database. Uh, Probably not connected yet. Let me connect. So you see here, this is the host name of the database we connected. I'm just connecting to it, and let me run this command which just shows like all the comments on it. So here you see like there are 2 comments here.
Yeah.
And yeah, like this is the comment. Yeah, it gives you all those details. Like it says the first comment, second comment, and then if I go here and like to third comment, basically come back and not select the whole query. Yeah. I think it did not refresh yet.
Is this connecting to the exact same DB or is it a different one?
It should be the same one. Let me double check the URL. Oh yeah, you are right. Maybe it's not connected to the right DB. Let me make sure.
It's always a gotcha, right? You put one turkey in the oven a few hours in advance. You put the other one. You're like, oh well, and then you're pointing your application at the wrong turkey. That's things we learn on Friday the 13th.
Let us make sure. Connection. Okay, connection is successful. Okay.
There we go.
That was the wrong database. Good call.
I only know by getting in my own way enough times. That's the only way you learn.
Yeah. Otherwise, I would be called a liar. Yeah, you see your comment here. So yeah, like you saw, you can use a combination of services. You can create a Lightsail container front end, and then you can create a database backend using the Lightsail databases. Now the cool thing is you can go here and go to the capacity and change the capacity to say 3 nodes. Uh, and it just maintains the state across all the nodes and it connects to the same database, so you are not losing any of your data across these nodes. So the persistent layer is safe there. So yeah, I think it was the right time. So the client 2 is ready. So we'll go to this client 2. You see it's the client 2 and it's connected to the same Redis. Now let's hope it shows the same value we had. Yeah, you see it's the value 4. We'll increment it here and we'll go to client 1, show the value 5. So they're all talking to the same Redis data store. So yeah, I think these are the key core features, but obviously because it's Lightsail, you have all the necessary auxiliary features as well. If you want to see the logs of your container deployment, you can just go here, see what's happening with your deployment. You can filter it to just show your deployment log if you want. Basically has only 2 states because it was successful one. You can remove it to see what's happening with it. You see the health checks, it's getting ready and running in background, all these steps. Basically the container logs which you want. You also have the metrics for these. You can see what's the CPU utilization for your service. You can also see the memory. So that's all there. And Rob, you were asking about custom domains. So it's basically you create a certificate here and associate a domain. I think I may have an example in the video. So if I go here and create the client 2, maybe not this one. The problem is I have a lot of services. Yeah, this is a good one. So if I go to the custom domains here, you see I have a certificate here which is already attached to the service, and you see a custom domain for it. I just click on it and it's basically another instance of that service, which is going through this custom domain. You don't see the long URL of this one, let's say.
Awesome. So if I had to really summarize this, it's separate from what we recapped before, Lightsail for containers especially now enables you to really just get your foot in the door with your deployment, 0 to 1, time to value as optimally as possible. And then, you still have a lot of these tie-ins, which would be more advanced features, I'd say, in many ways, right? And you don't have to fully graduate from Lightsail before you start using them. They're still built in-house here to under the philosophy of, make this as easy for people to use as possible, right? So with domains, you in here may not have to go to Route 53 in the console, right? It's just all in one place. You think about your deployments as applications, and really just optimized for the user experience in terms of eliminating the number of things that they need to keep track of.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Rob, how are we doing over there?
Yeah, this is I think a really clear illustration of not only containers as a kind of getting started quickly mechanism, but also, we dived quite deep, right? We talked about these two clusters of applications. Really, they're the same application, but you can imagine that there's two different versions, and they're talking to the same Redis microservice in the back end, which isn't exposed to the public internet. So as I see it, there's the major features that you need to get started, and they're all here.
Yeah, I think in terms of the range of applications, it could be like, a single container web app, or it could be a microservice which has like, a few microservices talking to each other. Obviously, if you have like, 1,000 microservices talking to each other, like Amazon or Netflix, then you are not a good candidate for this. There is CPS or EKS for that, but like, or fairly like, SMB or small startup like applications, this is super good.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Shashira, thank you so much again. First of all, a huge thankful for staying on the line for so long as the last guest of 4. I know that wait must have been rough, but anyone who's been tuning in and following along, I think, is certainly realizes this launch was certainly well worth the wait if they were tuning in for the entire broadcast. Again,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Amazon Lightsail making it as easy as possible to get started with the cloud. And, you showed us a bunch of different demos and use cases here. But if you are a developer who's just getting your feet wet with containers, you've installed Docker locally, you have an image, a Docker image, I can't think of an easier way to get that hosted and serve users, customers, or even just to host a demo app in a way that, just like eliminates a lot of the things that to you could be noise, right? All these other features and knobs and dials that distract you from the one little thing that you want to do. And I think bringing containers into the wheelhouse here with Lightsail is something that a lot of people will be excited to try out, myself included.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we are nearing the end of the broadcast. That is going to do it for all of our guest sessions.